Hello, you're listening to Shoot the Hostage. My name's Sarah, and together with my partner Dan, we are a movie podcast where we talk about 8 different films per season based around a specific theme. Now, if you're hearing my voice, that means it's my choice of theme this season. But before we get stuck in, I do want to mention we get quite spoilery, so please bear that in mind. We don't want to ruin the film for you, so if you haven't seen it, maybe go away and then come back. If you like what you hear and you would like to help us out, there are a number of ways you can do that. The absolute easiest one is to just recommend us to a friend. If you want to go the extra mile, a 5-star review on Spotify would be hugely appreciated. A review on your podcast player of choice would also be hugely helpful. And if you really, really want to help us, we've got a Patreon, which is £3 a month, and you get access to a ton of extra content in the form of reviews of new cinema releases, new streaming releases. You get to see the lineup of the season ahead of time, and we do a wrap show at the end of every season. But all of that aside, I just want to say thank you for listening, and let's get stuck in.
We are continuing our coming of age theme, your season.
Yep.
This is movie number 4.
Yes.
Today we're talking about La La Land.
No, we're not. How dare you, Warren Beatty?
I watched La La Land. Did I watch La La Land?
You would be caught dead watching La La Land.
Well, I wouldn't be caught alive, dead, gutted. I've actually seen La La Land.
Have you?
No, I haven't. I don't know why I said that. Of course, we're talking about Moonlight, not
Yes.
La La Land. The actual winner of the Oscar. Not
Despite the kerfuffle at the ceremony.
Despite Warren Beatty's announcement. Yeah. We wanted to record this last night, but unfortunately, Kent County Council decided to dig up the road outside our studio. I say studio, it's my bedroom.
Shh.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So
they don't need that peek behind the curtain.
They were digging all night, so we abandoned it yesterday, and we've been in standby. Oh no, we need to do a thing mode all day today, and now we are doing it.
Neurodivergent limbo mode.
That was a very neurodivergent, over-explainy type intro, wasn't it?
Yeah. Fear of being misunderstood.
Yeah.
So relatable.
Explain everything in excruciating detail just to make sure you're not misunderstood.
Yep.
And then get angry when someone still misunderstands
Yes.
you. Or frustrated might be a better term. It's a 2016 movie.
Mm-hmm.
We've done 3 other movies from 2016.
Oh, no.
You know this game by now.
I shouldn't I? You catch me by surprise every single time.
Every time you're like, oh no, this thing again. Well, yeah, the thing we do every time.
Oh, okay.
Go on, name them. 3.
Don't breathe.
Ding.
There's 3 more.
There's 2 more.
There's 2 more. Revenge? No, we haven't covered Revenge.
We've not covered Revenge, Sarah.
I've covered that twice, but never on this podcast, on other podcasts.
Not for the only podcast that matters or is important.
Oh, give me a clue.
Maybe I want to heist banks because I'm...
Oh, Hell or High Water.
And do you want a clue for the other one?
Yes, please.
Human.
Ex Machina.
Not.
Human.
You are a squid monster from outer space.
Oh.
Heptapod. And I'm Jeremy Renner in tiny glasses.
Arrival.
Yes. God, that was laboured, wasn't it?
Yes. Talk about excruciating.
It's the 4th movie from 2016 that we've covered, so it seems like we quite like that year.
Apparently.
Or at least we've accidentally covered, this is our 4th movie that we've covered from that year. But you haven't seen Moonlight before, correct?
I've seen it now. Don't worry. Don't panic. I have actually seen it.
Again, with the over-explaining.
Yeah. Prior to the last week, no, I'd never seen it.
So first time watch for you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're aware of all movies that come out.
Most.
Why did you skip this one? What about it? Was it one of those that just fell through the cracks, or did you actively avoid it for whatever reason? Or
I actively avoided it.
Okay, well tell me about that.
So for me, this is a very personal thing, but it was sort of the Oscars stigma because I'm sort of the opposite of pretentious, which might be the most pretentious.
I'm trying to figure that out in my brain, but I can't do that equation. So I'll just say yes.
In that I kind of actively avoid stuff that feels too awardsy. It generally is not my thing.
Yeah. I can understand that.
And that's a very broad, sweeping statement. Obviously, there are outliers, things like Get Out, which I loved.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't know. For the most part, I think when a film comes out, you can take one look at it and go, that's going to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
Like if it's a period drama or a 3-hour epic about slavery or something, like it just has those hallmarks. And this, I knew so little about beyond the fact that it won Best Picture that year.
So you just sort of avoided it because the whole Oscar thing.
Yeah.
I know when we were growing up in the 90s and I would stay up and watch the Oscars, they were almost always period dramas. And yeah, certainly when I was a teenager, not interested in that sort of thing. Slightly give those things more of a chance now, but I'm similar as well. If there's a movie that's won a boatload of awards, probably it's not going to be my sort of thing, which is, like you say, it's a bit of a blanket statement and you are writing off a lot of good stuff. I think the only reason that I watched this, I mean, I was aware of it coming out. I don't think I ever saw a trailer or anything, so I didn't know what it was about. But all I knew was that the La La Land Moonlight thing.
Yeah.
And then on my last podcast with Nicole, I think we picked this for one of our episodes and I watched it for that. So I kind of avoided it as well. Not actively. It's not like I'm never going to watch that movie, but I just didn't really have much interest in it.
But for similar reasons.
For similar reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. It's just the type of movies, isn't it? It's why can't I think of a single example now from the night, like Shakespeare in Love?
Yeah. Oh God. I fell asleep during the cinema. One of the only times I've ever fallen asleep at the cinema was during Shakespeare in Love.
I fall asleep at the cinema all the time.
I know. Weekly.
It does depend on what we're watching. If it's Avatar, I'm having a snooze.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sort of slipped me by a little bit up until that point. And then, as I say, Nicole and I spoke about it. Spoilers, loved it, thought it was an excellent movie, and was glad that I sort of managed to get round to it.
Well, I think one of the reasons that I chose it was because I always try to get quite a diverse selection of films for my lineups. And coming of age, when you Google coming of age movies, they're all quite similar.
Yeah.
Whereas this one felt like a bit of an outlier, like it's a kind of an art house movie.
I would agree with that.
And obviously it's about the Black gay experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not the sort of thing I would normally gravitate towards, but it was a film that had been spoken about so highly. I felt like it was becoming a bit of a blind spot. So I wanted to watch it, and I felt like this was a really good opportunity.
I totally agree. A lot of coming of age movies are kind of a bunch of kids sitting around having a chat, being a bit naughty, and then by the end of it going, "Oh, we're gonna grow up soon." And that is the case with most of them, I would say. Obviously, this season already we've spoken about Carrie, which is more of a genre thing, of course. Stand By Me, which is a bit more traditional.
Definitely,
I guess. Ginger Snaps last week. You said that you quite like to diversify, but I would say that 50% of the ones we've spoken about thus far have had periods in.
Well, yeah.
And then there was also that incest season as well. Don't forget that.
Oh, come on. I realised recently I've been getting super into reading this year because I buy so many books and then they just sit on the shelf. So this year I've tasked myself with getting through as many books as possible. And I started reading Flowers in the Attic again. And the last time I read that was when I was about 13 years old. And I remember telling my teacher about it in class and she looked horrified. And then I got to the end of the book and I realised why. And I'm starting to wonder if that's like subconsciously what implanted the incest.
Right.
Seed.
Okay.
So like, for reasons unknown, I'm drawn to things like that.
It's just one of the darkest things that you can think
It's
of,
grim,
isn't it?
yeah.
So there is to be fair to incest.
In defense of incest.
In defense of incest. You said that.
Don't sound clip that, whatever you do.
No, it's a. I mean, we spoke about that to quite some degree, and also in the rap show of season 6. So, if you want to hear our thoughts on incest, sign up to our Patreon and listen to the season 6 rap show.
But yeah, despite the two commonalities between our first and third picks of this season, I think they're quite diverse overall. Yeah, it's hard to talk about because 4 of them haven't been announced publicly yet, so I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, from coming up after this?
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm glad that you picked this one. It is quite different. It is structurally told in a very different way, I would say, than anything else. I think it's a very unique film.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anything quite like it. It's about a young black gay boy who grows up into a guy, and it's about his identity, exploring performative masculinity and all of that stuff.
The idea of nature and nurture as well, I guess.
Nature and nurture. There's a bunch of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find really, well, firstly, like, I think that's a subject that should get more attention. And I didn't think about it prior to seeing this film, but yeah, I haven't actually seen another film that explores those areas. But also I feel like it can be interpreted in many different ways. Mm-hmm. And I relate to this film for different reasons as well. And I think it's one of those that is good because it's about a very specific thing, but also you can
be applied a bit more universally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. So let's talk about the film itself and the people involved. Let's start there, shall we?
Let's start with Barry Jenkins.
I don't know a thing about Barry Jenkins.
I think he's only made a handful of movies. Mm-hmm. I think his first one was in 2008, I want to say.
So in only 8 years, he became an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
That's so impressive.
I think Moonlight was his third film.
Wow.
He's married to Lulu Wang.
I don't know who that is.
Filmmaker, I believe she made The Farewell. Don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it.
Okay. He's a defender of, if we're going to explore Barry Jenkins, he's a defender of Howard the Duck.
Oh, so you love him?
I love him.
Okay.
I listened to his episode with Brett Goldstein's podcast, Films to be Buried With. And yeah, it was one of those where what's the film? The question was what's the film that you love that is universally panned and hated? and Jenkins was like, honestly, when I was a kid, I used to watch Howard the Duck all the time, loved it, thought it was great. And then when I became older and found out that people thought it was terrible, he couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
He was like, what do you mean? What, this masterpiece? Howard the Duck?
I feel that way about Mac and Me, but I'm alone. It's just me and Paul Rudd.
I think Mac and you can't defend Mac and Me.
And yet I continue to.
Yeah. That McDonald's advert. So he's my new favourite person. But he adapted Moonlight in Brussels. The original play was called...
I think it was In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue.
That's right.
Which is obviously a line that they kept in the movie.
Yeah. Written by Tarell Alvin McCraney. It never made it to stage, apparently.
I was going to say, I read that it was an unproduced play.
Yeah.
So what were the circumstances surrounding that then? So Barry Jenkins was supposed to direct it for the stage?
I don't know the circumstances surrounding that. That is not something that I looked at.
Okay.
I was just surprised to hear that, it wasn't actually made into a play. I guess it was just one of those screenplays that was floating around that got a lot of buzz. McCraney, I think, is quite a celebrated writer, playwright. I don't really know what playwright means, but I'm going to say
somebody who writes plays.
Somebody.
The clue is in the name, Dan.
Yeah, so it never got made. And then I think, from what I heard, is Jenkins was quite friendly with Plan B, which is Brad Pitt's production company.
Okay.
And had decided to, while he was in Brussels, randomly, adapt this into a screenplay for a film. And sort of showed it to Plan B and was like, oh, look, this is an example of my work kind of thing. They were like, well, great, let's make this then. And he was like, oh, okay. fine. So I guess we're going with this. But I think what ended up happening is the project became a really good, true reflection of both McCraney and Jenkins' kind of childhoods.
Yeah, I did read a little bit about the fact that they're both from the same neighborhood, aren't they?
Liberty Square, yeah.
In Miami.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's an area that's just got so much history, dating back to the 30s.
Apparently, it's still one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in America.
Yeah, and Florida has all sorts of drug-related issues and other things going on as well. But yeah, so Jenkins went to Plan B. Like, let's make this movie then, and then it actually became the first movie that A24 ever funded.
Really?
Yes, I think they were. I want to say distribution before that.
Yeah,
because they're a relatively new company. I want to say they started distributing around 2012, 2013, I want to say, something like that.
It's within the last sort of 15 years, I would say.
And then this became the first one that they funded.
Wow.
And
I saw that the budget was pretty meager.
Yeah, 1.5 million.
That's crazy.
It grossed 65, so absolutely smashed. It won awards. Their first movie that they've ever produced has made absolute bank. So they're laughing all the way to the bank. And then that unlocked A24, I guess, to become the huge... And we talk about this all the time. Like, if we see an A24 badge, then that's like, I don't care what it's about. I'm probably there's going to be some kind of interesting thing to this film that I want to consume. And now they're sort of producing the biggest movie that they've made to date is Civil War, which came out obviously this year. Alex Garland's Civil War. But I was very interested and shocked and surprised and delighted to find out that this was their first movie. And I think that's I guess pretty lucky that you knew Jenkins and you got to make this film for several reasons.
I guess so. I don't know who the decision makers at A24 are, but I think they must be pretty savvy because there've been so few misfires in their catalogue. It's as a production house and distributor, it's probably one of the most solid catalogues of all time, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously we talked about the fact that we both kind of inadvertently avoided this film for whatever reasons. Pathological demand avoidance, whatever. People telling you to watch a film and you going, no. Yeah. But what were your expectations?
I honestly had none because I didn't know anything about it.
Okay.
Other than it won the Oscar, but almost didn't. And that's literally all I know. So I say like first time watching it, I had zero expectations. Honestly, like because of the Oscar thing was probably a bit like, I'm not really too fussed about watching this.
Yeah. I think I expect that maybe films that win Oscars are going to be a little bit dry.
Yeah, maybe. So, but I didn't really have any expectations.
Okay. I think to my mind, I knew very little about this going in, but I think I'd maybe misinterpreted and thought I was going to be in for a sort of, not necessarily kitchen sinky type drama, but maybe something a bit grittier. Like it is gritty, but the way it's presented is like the cinematography is beautiful, the camera fluidity, the movement is excellent, and the sound design as well. It's produced in such a way that kind of is divorced from perhaps what I was expecting. And I think I was anticipating something in the realm of like maybe Andrea Arnold or maybe not like Mike Leigh or whatever, but something a bit more, I don't know, a bit grimier.
Yeah. I think, you've touched on something that's interesting there. I think there is a very nice kind of combination of obviously you're exploring this real area with these kind of very realistic and grey characters, which are based on facts, are based on McCraney's early life.
Okay.
And there is I'm thinking about the music, the sort of music that they use throughout the film, particularly in the first two acts as well, like more of a classical situation. You've got some violins in there, and it's a very like a thinky. What's the word? It's quite I can't think of the word that I'm trying to think of.
You wouldn't expect to see it in a film covering these topics, which sounds quite judgmental when I say it out loud, but
It's not judgmental. It's because that's what we've been.
It's what we've come to expect.
That's what we've been fed. We've been given, black stories straight out of Compton. I haven't seen Straight Outta Compton, I've got to admit, so I might be judging that poorly or without any knowledge. But just like films where it's always like a gangster rap or whatever, it's a character, and then you've got these harsh lyrics and stuff, hip hop, but it does something very different.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's it's part of the reason what makes it stand out.
I agree.
I think, have you Mahershala Ali? All right, okay. So he's in this movie. Very surprised when I first watch it that he's not in it that much. And it's fascinating that he's not in it that much, but yet his character is kind of felt, his presence is felt throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is a mixture of his performance and the writing and the other, and the people that play the various versions of Sharon as well.
The obvious impact that character's had going forward.
Yeah.
I think I'd assumed he would be in it a little bit more. And the whole thing is dealt with quite weirdly, because they never really address his absence. And apparently there was some more exposition included in the original dialogue that was omitted as they were filming, because he was just like, no, like we don't need it. We don't need to spoon feed the audience. It will be obvious enough from cues and the way they're looking and talking, and just little moments between Sharon and, is it Teresa?
Teresa, Janelle
Monáe.
Janelle Monáe. Yeah, you don't need to explain it. I think if you're, as like many movies, as long as you're paying attention, I think you'll get what you need to get out of it. And I think maybe the first time I saw it, I was a little bit thrown. Like I had to it was a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Like we get to the third act and then I realised what was going on, kind of, in a way.
Well, you weren't used to being told.
Yeah, but then it made the first 2/3 of it all the more satisfying as far as I was concerned. And then obviously for the second time watching it for the podcast, I knew exactly what was going on. So I was able to tap into everything a bit more finely this time, I think. Obviously, Mahershala Ali, did you hear about the Blade movie that he was meant to be in that's been shelved?
So
also known as cancelled.
Right. I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit here and say I'd never heard of him until the Blade news came out. Like I knew he'd been cast as new Blade, years ago now.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I'm sad that project's not going to come to fruition, because I think he would have made a really good Blade, to be honest.
Agreed. I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah. But I haven't seen him in a great deal of stuff. He's great, though.
Yeah, he's very good. I think we cast him in our Dreamscape recasting, didn't we?
Yes, I remember now.
He made a movie. He shot a movie in 2001. I saw this pop up on Reddit the other day, randomly, completely coincidentally. But in 2001, he shot a movie called Taste the Revolution, and it's only just getting a release now.
What? Why?
I think something to do with 9/11.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's called Taste the Revolution. There is an article in Hollywood Reporter, but I haven't. I think I skimmed it one day when it was really early, so I forget exactly the contents of the article. Perhaps I will post it in the episode description.
Useful. So, I'm terrible at this, and I didn't write down anybody else's names, but I want to talk about
some names for you.
Awesome.
I've got a list.
I want to talk about the 3 boys and men that played Chiron at different points during his life.
Yeah. So it's, I like this movie because it's very neatly, this is Act 1, this is Act 2, this is Act 3.
Yeah, complete with title cards.
Yeah. I seem to recall movies a little bit easier when they do that for me. They spell it out for me. But you've got Alex Hibbert, who plays little Chiron, and it's just called Little. Was 6 or 7 years old or something. I don't really know children's ages. Ashton Sanders plays Chiron, which is 16-year-old Chiron. And then you've got Trevante Rhodes, who plays Black, which is the adult version, I guess around mid to late 20s ish. I'm
assuming mid to late 20s. Yeah, I think I read somewhere that it was supposed to be about 10 years between Act 2 and Act 3.
Right.
So assuming he's 17?
Yeah.
Then maybe mid to late 20s.
Yeah. I thought they were all great to be honest with you. The first two could have been the same person, as far as I know. They could have just done a Boyhood thing where they shot it over 10 years or whatever. And then the change to Trevante Rhodes in the third act, I thought was inspired. Like, to the point where I remember the first time I watched it and went, what the fuck? And I got it.
Yeah.
Genius casting, I thought. But aside from, maybe we'll get into the physical side later, but just the way those three actors carried that performance through, I thought was really elegantly done. I thought it was really interesting to watch as well, and the progression from the kid to the teenager to the adult, and you can see that whole life path. And you know, obviously it's the writing as well, but the performances I just thought were fantastic over those three people that played that one character.
Yeah.
But I also think all of the supporting cast are magnificent. You know.
Oh yeah.
I think you need a Naomi Harris in there, a veteran, and the way that she interacts with. She's the only character that interacts with all three of those.
She's the only one that's in all three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she apparently filmed her role in only 3 days because she was. What was the Bond film she was in? She was
shooting James Bond. I believe it was Spectre. I mean, she's been in all of the new Craig ones, I think. Yeah. But yeah, it would have been Spectre around that time.
Yeah, and I read that there was, obviously she was deep into the promotion for that, but there was a visa issue as well. So she had to film her role for this super, super fast, which is so impressive because, as you just said, she's in all 3 sections of the film.
Yeah.
And she's the only person who plays the same character in all 3. So she's been aged up. That's remarkable.
Yeah, and she's really good.
And she had to have a connection with each of the people playing her son as well. Like,
yeah, just immediately fly in, shoot your stuff, but you've got to be magnetic and really interesting to watch, but also see the humanity in her and see the, you know, you don't like her character, but at the same time, you're not pointing at her and going, bad person. At least I'm not anyway. I'm sort of going, you know, you've made some poor choices, but you're a human. Yeah, fantastic.
I think people in the throes of addiction are victims also, though.
Yeah, and it's, you know, there are huge problems with addiction, and people, as a matter of circumstance, for a variety of reasons, find themselves on that path. And I don't think it's helpful to judge people for their decisions. I think it's much more helpful, useful to understand and try and help.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. Like, it's very easy to look at her character and go, "Oh, you fucking asshole."
Yeah.
But it's just not as black and white as that. And I think she brings a real interesting complexity, particularly in the third act. She's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that scene in a bit, though, because I think that's the one that had probably the biggest impact on me.
Oh, you reckon?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to the youngest iteration of Chiron when he's little. I mean, initially I was just like, this kid's giving us nothing because he says so little. And I don't know, watching it for the first time, I was just like, he has taken "Don't Talk to Strangers" too much to heart.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't utter a word for ages. But then the more it progressed, the more I realised how great that kid was. Like, he didn't need to say much, but he was still saying a lot, like with his demeanour and his actions and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously, Alex Hibbert is, again, the only one that interacts with Mahershala Ali. And I would say Ali does a lot of heavy lifting because he's the one sort of doing the talking, but Hibbert is obviously reacting off of that. And I think it's the right choice because Ali's character is reflecting upon or having such an influence on Little. Like, he's almost a blank slate in a way, and you can see, as we sort of alluded to earlier, that Ali character has influenced him throughout his whole life. And he's not a black and white character. He's a very grey character. On the one hand, he's very nice and supportive to Little. He's there for him. On the other hand, he's selling drugs to Little's mum. And it's a very interesting kind of battle between black and white there. I think it's just sort of lives in a very interesting place. And again, based on a real person by all accounts. So
right. Okay.
there was actually a real one that was there for McCraney as a kid.
Okay. So sort of stepped in as a father figure.
Yeah, I don't know all of the details about it, but yeah.
Is Juan the first character that we see?
Yes, that's the first scene, isn't it? Because it opens on one, and we're following him, and it's a single take, which I love.
The camera moving around the two. Oh, yeah.
That's like, I remembered a lot, actually, to be fair, from my first viewing to my second viewing. But that was the one thing that I could see in my head almost beat for beat, that opening. Because if you do a oneer as your first shot, I'm in.
You're locked.
I'm locked.
Yeah.
Like I could be watching the rest of the film. Even if the rest of the film's terrible, I'll be sitting there going, might be another oneer soon. But it was a really effective way of opening the movie, because you're following that character. The camera is spinning around Juan and his friend, and you're being introduced to the neighborhood. Your Juan is center frame. He's the big man. He's obviously the respect of the neighborhood. It's doing a lot. It's introducing you to him, to the various characters in the neighborhood itself, and it's very effective. I really like the opening to this film.
I think the camera work throughout the film does such a good job of plonking you right into the events that are happening. It's
really it has a big effect on me, the way that the camera is used in this. Like, so artfully done.
It's weird, isn't it? Because at times it almost feels like not quite documentary, but a bit like Fly on the Wall. Like you feel like you could almost be there.
Yeah.
But it is so artfully done. It's not just a point and shoot. It's not just a follow along. Everything is so well thought out.
Yeah.
And the camera, I think, is a huge part of why the story is so affecting.
Agreed. I see what you're getting at with the documentary kind of / reality TV angle. Like it's a very conscious decision to put the camera between Chiron and whoever he was interacting with, so that you feel like you're being talked to. Naomi Harris sort of looks directly into the camera a few times. But one scene specifically I'm thinking of as well, and it's a very conscious decision from Jenkins to make you feel like you're there and you're experiencing everything with this character.
There's a few instances of that really stood out to me as well. Obviously, we talked already about the camera sort of swirling around the characters. That happens again in Act 2 during the fight.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
but to very different effect.
Yeah.
And then the other one that really stood out to me is, I guess people online kind of refer to it as like the baptism scene when Mahershala Ali is teaching Little how to swim. The kid couldn't swim, so he was actually teaching him how to swim for real. But I thought it was really interesting as we were watching, and I didn't think about it too much more till after the fact. But the way the camera sits in the water and the ocean sort of laps above the camera frame, and it feels like we are there with them, and it's so well done. It's just such a subtle thing.
Yeah, the way the camera just sort of bobs up and down in the water.
Yeah.
And I love that scene as well. I think it's a really powerful scene on many levels. Again, you could pick that scene apart, and I'm sure a lot of people have, and I'm sure there's endless articles deservedly for this film. But I think that's one of the most powerful images in this, because it's kind of a representation of the entire movie, isn't it? Because one is kind of baptizing this kid. He's teaching him how to swim. He's teaching him how to be a human. He's teaching him how to be, quote unquote, masculine, a man, and doing things for himself in this, dangerous world. Jenkins, not something I thought about, but Jenkins pointed out, you have images of African American people in the Atlantic, makes you think of certain things in history as well. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in that.
Okay.
That is very interesting.
God, it's
so fucking layered.
I really do wish I'd had an opportunity to watch it a second time before recording, because That didn't cross my mind at all. That's fascinating.
But me neither. I watched it a second time with you, and I watched it with the commentary as well. So I've sort of seen it 3 times. But it wasn't until I've consumed quite a few interviews with Jenkins, so I think I've heard pretty much everything that he's got to say about this film.
And Howard the Duck.
And Howard the Duck, yeah. But yeah, it's not until he pointed it out, and I was like, God, that's interesting.
It's rich, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think that's maybe is my favourite scene. If I have to pick a favourite scene, it's maybe the thing that I think sums up this movie the most, probably, I would say. Because essentially it's about someone coming of age and growing up and what decisions they make, whether he's gay or whether he's straight. I think that's a very specific thing that you're digging into, and that's what McCraney's experience was, growing up as a black gay kid.
Okay.
But like I say, it's less about being gay and being, in my mind anyway, to me, it's more about just being comfortable with who you are. Who you are is irrelevant. It's, everyone has the right to be who they are, and it's looking at the things that society does to make you suppress things or present differently or quote unquote correctly.
I think I disagree on a couple of points maybe there. I think it's really important to include like the socio-political and economic factors in that as well, because I hear what you're saying, like it almost doesn't matter whether he is gay or straight or whatever, he's just confused and figuring out his identity. But I think it does matter in that, like, black people are marginalised, gay people are still marginalised. Being black and gay is potentially some of the most marginalised people on the planet, bar, outside of trans people. And I find that really interesting because to empathise with that point of view, I can absolutely see why the character plays out the way it does. Because if you're put upon, if you're constantly, have people calling you the F slur or making fun, if his mom sort of comments on the way, haven't you seen the way he walks? So it's unavoidable. He's always forced to think about it.
Yeah.
So what would you do in response to that? Get jacked.
Yeah. Make
yourself imposing so people are less likely to give you shit about it. And then that sort of masks who you are.
Yeah. It's a shield.
Yeah.
He's wearing a costume.
It's so well done. And you can absolutely sort of see the cogs whirring and turning in his head and like why he's done the things he's done. And I loved it. But yeah, going back to, I guess, the second act, remind me of the actor's name who's playing Chiron.
Ashton Sanders.
He was great as well. Like you say, physically looked so much like Little, but I don't know, it just brought something more to it as well. Like he's still really self-conscious. It's still very obvious that he's super unsure of himself. But I don't know, I got so much more out of it. Like the interactions with his mom, the interactions with Kevin.
Yeah.
And then when it sort of reaches boiling point right at the end of Act 2. And in a way you're sort of, I don't know, there's an element of catharsis, but coupled with that, oh fuck.
Yeah. I think the
middle for me was just a roller coaster.
Yeah, you're right. I think for me, one of the most difficult, there's a couple of difficult scenes in this movie. One of the ones that I found difficult to watch is the one with Naomi Harris when he comes home from school.
Oh, and she's asking him for money.
She goes, oh, you can't be here, fuck off.
Yeah.
So he goes out and then he comes back, or he's walking past his house, and she says, come and let me in, I'm locked out of my own house, plus give me the money that Teresa has given you to buy drugs. And it's a really difficult scene, and I think they both play that really well.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't see more of Naomi Harris because she really is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I do agree. I really enjoyed watching her. I thought she was great. But one of the things I really like about this is how lean it feels, how economical it feels. It's almost 3 stories in one, but one big story. But it's, what is it, an hour 45 minutes?
Yeah, it's not a long film by any stretch.
It's not a long film. You've got Act 1 half hour, Act 2 half hour, Act 3 45 minutes or 40 minutes. And it just absolutely flies by for me. And that's one of the things that I really like about it. is that it's so economical with all the information it's given you, and it's really very surprising that by the end of it, you know everything that's going on, you get everything, because like you said with the one character earlier, they don't really explain where he's gone, but you get it from the interactions if you're paying attention. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen more Naomie Harris, but at the same time, I think this is a perfectly paced movie, and I don't want to fuck with that.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm really grateful that we do get that sort of redemptive moment for her in Act 3, though.
Yeah.
And that almost brought me to tears, I'll be honest. Have you ever seen something called Poppy Shakespeare?
No.
It was an adaptation of a book. I want to say it's by Zadie Smith, but don't quote me on that. And it was a made-for-TV movie, I guess. She's outstanding in that. Absolutely heartbreaking.
Okay.
It's about the mental health service in the UK, effectively, and how fucked it is. But she is, just chef kiss.
Okay.
Definitely watch that if you get the chance. But yeah, I guess it's not her story, so I can appreciate that she's not in it more. But I do enjoy when she's on screen. Yeah. Even if it boils my piss when she's being just the worst human being.
Yeah.
So obviously, at the halfway point in the film, it's kind of like that pivotal moment between Chiron and Kevin. And because we're not given very much, or we are rather, but it's subtly done. Do you think Kevin knew about Chiron's sexuality, or I couldn't get a read on that. I wasn't sure. I loved the sense of kind of acceptance between the two.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree. I really liked the sense of acceptance in that moment between the two of them, but it does also make what happens after that all the more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But do I think he knew about his sexuality? I would say he probably suspected. It doesn't seem like it's Kevin's first rodeo. It certainly was Chiron's. So I think he probably suspected it, but I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily that important. He knew it in that moment, or that they understood between them in that moment after their interaction. They had a little kiss, straight for the trousers, like immediately. Yeah, I mean, when it happened, you were like, "Oh, wow, okay." Immediate handshake.
Don't waste any time.
Yeah. Wow, okay.
On a beach, no less.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would chafe.
I mean, you're going to get sand in all sorts of places that you don't want to get sand.
Exactly.
You'll be getting it out for weeks.
But it would make for a memorable first time.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Do you think there was a mutual attraction there, or do you think it was just sort of more of a camaraderie or an experimentation on Kevin's part? Or I don't know, because Kevin's sort of as important to the story as Chiron is.
I think
in many ways.
Yeah, I think they're both on their own journeys. I think their arc is similar in a way, I think, but it just feels like Kevin's
much more assured as a person, and
it feels like Kevin is maybe a bit further along than Chiron is.
Yeah.
But that again, there could be some circumstances there, because what's Chiron is not getting from home is a nurturing environment. You said nature versus nurture. It's certainly a story about a kid that wasn't nurtured or being told that he was loved and accepted. And perhaps Kevin was, I don't know. Yeah. So maybe he found it a bit easier to reconcile that stuff a bit sooner than Chiron has.
I do love that speech.
Which one?
Kevin's
speech.
On the beach, where he's talking about the breeze, the warm breeze.
Yeah.
I'm not going to quote it because I can't remember it.
Okay.
But I loved that because, again, I don't know, you don't see many films about young black men where they are allowed to be sensitive.
Yeah, vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, open.
Particularly around one another. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of bravado.
Yeah.
A lot of masculinity, toxic masculinity.
But it's denying characters the depth that they probably have.
Yes.
And I really like that they're able to explore that a bit here. And I think that scene is probably the biggest indicator to me, because Kevin is somebody who's not only probably had a better upbringing, but is more accepted at school amongst their peers.
Yeah.
Is more outwardly conforming.
I would say, yeah, he's definitely putting on a performance, though, I would say.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely afraid. And I
Yeah.
think that becomes obvious as Act 2 plays out the way it does.
He buckles to the peer pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And does the thing that he doesn't want to do, but he does it in the thought that he is preserving himself in some way.
I hate toxic masculinity. Can we talk about how gross it is?
I also think it's gross, Sarah.
But to go back to the beginning of the episode where we were talking about how we over-explain ourselves so as not to offend people, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding online that when women like me talk about toxic masculinity, some men view that as us saying that masculinity is toxic. And that's absolutely not what I'm saying. If you want to be masculine, stereotypically, go for it. I'm so happy for you. But masculinity to a certain point becomes toxic. It becomes limiting. It damages everybody, everyone involved.
I think it damages everyone involved, whether directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's something that we really need to focus on as a society.
Yeah.
Like, I think it will solve a lot of problems if we just address that, because the idea of, and that's one of the things that I love about this movie, the very specific idea of toxic masculinity and what you need to do to survive or thrive in this world, or just even get by.
Or just the whole, the culture of aggression and of literally fighting to prove your worth is fucked.
Yeah, you got to be a big, strong man now. I think it's tricky because we do. I can't believe that we live in a world where someone like Andrew Tate exists, where he is the absolute cartoon icon of toxic masculinity. He is the thing that we should burn down. I don't like him very much. Controversial. Yeah, he's an absolute tool, clearly. But I think it's the thing that we need to talk about is why some young men gravitate towards that. What are we going to do about that? And that's why I think films like this are very important. It's very important that films like this exist that are talking about that. Because I'm glad that you said it. I don't think you need to qualify that you're not criticizing masculinity, but I'm glad that you did, because there's a very important distinction. Masculinity is not bad in and of itself. What's bad is when you're told, as you know, from my perspective as a young boy growing up, I was told, don't cry in front of people. You're the man of the house. You've got to do this. You've got to earn the money. You've got to do that. And it's a lot of pressure for a kid. And I didn't have half the things that the characters in this are contesting with to deal with. So it was difficult for me. I imagine how difficult it is for someone else that has to find a way to survive. And if they feel the only way of surviving is by being, quote unquote, a toxic masculine guy, then I can see why you're going down that road. Don't agree with it. Don't think you should. But I think it's important to understand it and talk about it. And I think that's what I was very interested about the Kevin character at the end, because he's giving him the stage effectively towards the end of the movie to say, who are you and why are you? And he literally says, who is you? Which is very interesting. But I think, it's shit, man, that young men have to that feel like that they need to be a certain way at the expense of other more interesting, creative and loving ways to exist.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
It's a crime to everybody. And
this is why I am and have always been a feminist, and will always describe myself as a feminist, because despite the stigma around the word itself, I don't hate men. I hate a lot of men.
You keep saying that. I was starting to think that you do.
No, I don't hate men.
Well, I'm a man.
You are.
You don't hate me, last time I checked.
No, quite the opposite, in fact. But I don't just want to advocate for women's rights. I want everything to be equal.
Yeah.
I want things that will benefit men as well. And that's what I think a lot of men who are quite closed off to the notion of feminism don't seem to understand. Like, I want better paternity leave and paternity pay, baby changing toilets in the men's. Like, what about single fathers? They're kind of neglected. They're left behind. I want men's mental health to be better addressed. Look at the suicide rates amongst young men. It's fucked up. We need to do something about it. And absolutely, this film exemplifies all of that. And as you like, spoilers, I loved it.
I'm really happy that you loved it.
I'm getting quite emphatic at this point.
I thought that you would.
But I just, it was so unexpected.
Yeah. I think just going back to something that I touched on, I think that you solve a lot of problems if you just say to kids, you're loved and accepted. I think that it's not that difficult. I mean, there are circumstances and people have difficult circumstances to deal with, but if you just love and accept a kid for who they are, no matter what, as long as they're not hurting anyone, who fucking gives a shit what they're doing? Like,
that's why certain moments throughout the film are so lovely, because you have the discussion with Little and Juan at the table.
I love that.
And I'm not going to drop the F slur, but obviously they do talk about what he's being called at school. And Juan's just like, yeah, you might be gay, but, you know, you don't know that yet. You've got to figure that out for yourself. There's no judgment there. And I guess that's the closest he's come to any sort of acceptance at that point in his life. And then again, in the second section, you've got Teresa, who's sort of become that calming influence. I guess the mother that he's been missing in many ways. But then on the flip side of that, you've got the stuff that's going on at school. You've got that fucking prick with the dreadlocks who I would have absolutely beaten with a chair as well. Although, again, fucking heart-rending, because you know how it's going to play out for him. But yeah, that broke my heart, that the moment in Act 2 where Kevin's sort of manipulated into beating Chiron up. Yeah,
it's come not long after that tender moment on the beach as well, which again, it's what makes it so effective, because on the one hand you've got that scene where they both get on. Chiron's very happy by the end of that scene, and while Kevin is wiping his hand on the sand, and then yeah, it's really difficult to watch, because Kevin is.
You can see the pain on his face
from Chiron's point of view. He's going back on that. Like Chiron's probably interpreting that as he regrets what he did last night or something like that. I'm sure all of that stuff is going through his head. So on one hand, he was accepted last night, but now he's been rejected almost immediately and physically harmed.
Yeah, I think my take on that, you can sort of see on Chiron's face this sort of, I guess, acceptance of the circumstances.
He hardens in that scene.
But I don't think he necessarily blames Kevin. And I think that's obvious in who he takes his aggression out on, who he takes his frustration out on, because it isn't Kevin. It's, I forget the other guy's name, but it's the guy who orchestrated the fight. Yeah. So I think he knows. Yeah. But that must have been like a really confusing situation in an already pretty confusing life up to that point.
Yeah. And the fact that in the third act he receives a phone call from adult Kevin and says, you know, if you're ever in town, come into the restaurant, cook you a meal. And the fact that he does go, he's taking a risk there. But then I suppose, that lends to your theory that he doesn't blame Kevin really, because he turned up, he went there.
So now we're in Act 3. Do you know there's a connection between Act 3 and 2 shows we've done this season already?
A connection with Act 3 only and 2 shows we've already done?
Yes.
Is it a little crown trinket on a dash of a car?
It's not.
Is it...
It's Stephen King related. That's a big clue.
I'm never going to get this. I haven't got a clue. Please do relieve me. Not... Yes.
We'll save that for after the show. If you're lucky.
Sign up to our Patreon.
No. There will never be a Shoot the Hostage OnlyFans. I'm saying it now. Never.
Shoot can mean any number of things.
Nobody wants or needs to see that. I can guarantee you.
Agreed. Let's move on.
Quickly. So Andre Holland plays grown-up Kevin.
Yeah.
And he was the main character in season 1 of Castle Rock, which is the town that Stand By Me is set in.
Right.
And in the show, his mum was played by Sissy Spacek.
Oh, who is in the Carrie movie that we spoke
yes,
about a couple
also
of episodes.
Stephen King.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, I had no idea.
I thought that was a fun little connection.
Yeah.
But he's brilliant.
He's really just interesting to watch, isn't he? Just so charming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's great.
Very charismatic.
Yeah.
I can see the draw.
Yeah.
It's interesting because... So I was going to ask you this at the end of the show, but I'll ask you now. Obviously, Kevin and Chiron are in all 3 acts, but they're played by different actors at each stage of their lives. Do you think that there's a suggestion there that perhaps at different phases of your life you are like a different person?
Without question. Like, I think that's exactly what it's doing.
Because I know, like, on a cellular level, you're different at different stages of your life.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, a lot of people think that, like, if a celebrity messes up, for example, and their go-to apology is just like, I can't believe that person that I was. I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
And everybody's just like, yes, you fucking are. You're the same, but, you know, people don't become somebody else. But I guess the suggestion here is that you can.
I think you absolutely can.
Okay.
I think that's not to say that you're not responsible for your past decisions.
Yeah, of course.
You are.
But at the core of yourself, you're still the same person, aren't you?
I don't...
This is why I'm so fascinated by it.
I think there are certain aspects of yourself that don't change or maybe remain somewhat the same. But I don't think that there are many. I think it's more like your core beliefs that you learn as a very young child. Like, those things are probably imprinted upon you and you can't really change. But I don't know, man. I think with enough therapy, I think you can change anything you want to. And I feel like I have to believe that people can change. I have to.
Yeah.
Because
I think everybody's capable of change.
Otherwise, I wouldn't believe in rehabilitation, which which is what I believe the prison system is for.
Yeah.
To protect society and also to rehabilitate. I know that's a fucking crazy notion, but that's what I think it's there for. So I think if I believe that, then I have to believe that people can change. I'm a different person to who I was when I was 16, when I was 7, 17, 27, 37. I've evolved. Some parts about me are the same, but I think some things have really changed.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
And I think you are different people at different stages of your life. I've been different people at different stages of my life. I've been different people with different people. Like I think identity is very tricky. I don't think it's something that is static. I think it changes and wobbles a bit, from my perspective anyway. So yeah, I think it's fluid. I think you can change it. You can shape yourself. I think you just need to be able to do the work.
You're a social chameleon.
But I do really love the casting of Trevante Rhodes though, because you see he's a brick shithouse.
He's a
fucking
unit.
Enormous.
He is a unit.
Apparently, when his first day of filming was a very busy set. So I hear. But it's a really interesting way of showing exactly what that character's been through and how that character has survived the last 10 years since we checked in with middle Chiron.
But I love that, because you can absolutely see how somebody would go immediately to making yourself literally larger.
Yeah.
That's what animals do. In the animal kingdom, they literally try and make themselves appear bigger.
Yeah.
To be frightening.
He's made himself a suit of armour.
Yeah, it's an absolute defence mechanism.
He does the ice water thing in the morning, which I see as a sort of suiting up in the morning. He's putting his mask on in a way, because he does that at the end of Act 2 when just before he hits the kid with the chair.
I wish he'd clean his bathroom. Oh my God.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of bathrooms, have you ever had a boiled bath?
A boiled bath?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so power cuts back in the day. And,
yeah.
That brought back so many memories. It's like, oh yeah, I remember boiling my baths. But we had a very small kettle, so it was more like 10 boils or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wearing out the carpet, walking between the kitchen and the bath. Yeah, going back to that idea of him kind of suiting up.
Even the grills that he wears.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything is a veneer for that character. And he is that person because that's who he's presenting to be. But also the core of him. And that's what I was sort of saying. I think that people can absolutely change, but there might be some core things that are in there.
He's still the same sensitive little kid.
You can see that he's still the kid that was dancing in front of that mirror and just wasn't really paying any attention to anyone else and was just loving it. Like that's the only time that the small version of that character was kind of outside.
Letting loose.
Yeah, just letting loose. And you can sort of see that.
And he smiles so infrequently throughout this film, but he always smiles around Kevin.
A very charming guy.
I get it.
He thinks that he's going to get another happy time.
Another hand shandy on the beach.
He's like, what? Restaurant? Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes.
He's forever horny at the ocean now because of the association.
Yeah. Like some people, they can't fall asleep, so they'll put on like Sounds of the Ocean.
Yeah.
And he can't do that because he's not getting any sleep.
That's porn to him.
Yeah.
Speaking of, actually.
Speaking of
not
porn.
But you just made me think of one of my favourite points of this film.
Yeah.
The breeze that Kevin talked about in Act 2 was such a poignant moment and a pivotal moment, but also comes back at the end. And I fucking loved that because there are so many moments throughout this film where the sound doesn't match what you're seeing on screen, particularly with dialogue.
Yeah.
It happens in a scene with I think his mom's yelling and there's classical music playing over it.
Oh, in the hallway.
Yeah.
Which was a recurrent, that pops up a couple of times.
And she's kind of like bathed in neon light. It looked phenomenal.
I believe he's dreaming that at one point as well, isn't he?
And then there's another scene where she's talking to him and the camera's on her, but her mouth isn't moving. Like it's not aligned. And again with Kevin, but then you've got that scene at the end and you can hear the breeze.
Yeah.
They bring in like the breeze sound effects. Right. And I was just like, oh, you motherfuckers, I'm going to cry.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And because his whole speech was just like, everybody stops what they're doing and just kind of enjoys it. It's like, you know, the way he sort of describes this warm breeze is almost like euphoric.
Yeah. A moment of peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Chiron's obviously associating that peace and tranquility with Kevin.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So when you hear that noise at the end,
I think because you're seeing the images and the sounds that don't quite mix together, it's obviously showing you that this is where Chiron is disconnecting, is where he's disassociating. And it's part of his coping mechanism is to try not to take on board this shit that like when he's a kid he didn't know how to cope, but his coping mechanism now is to kind of shut off a little bit or a lot. But yeah, I didn't notice that at the end where you have the sound of the breeze, and I suppose Chiron's character is hearing that, so he's having a moment of, oh, okay, yeah,
I can be myself.
Yeah, accepted. And it's interesting that Kevin does give him the space to be that, to do that, and it's something that Jenkins spoke about, I think, in the commentary when he goes to the restaurant. Kevin is serving customers. He's come in, he's sort of talking to Chiron or Black and then leaving, and he's sort of at various points giving him an out if he wants to. Like he looks at the door at one point but makes a decision to stay, and I think it's interesting that character just gives him the space to do what he wants to do, because that is his arc. He's going from doing what he is something that's not him to being more accepting of himself. And yeah, it's a really interesting story with characters that you are frustrated by, but also like and can understand the decisions that they've made. I
think that's kind of the biggest compliment you can pay to this script. Well, not just the script, but the actors and the direction and the way it's all brought to life is. I found it so easy to empathize with everyone, and I think that's down to, as I said, multitude of things, but like predominantly the nuanced performances, I guess. And I think the mark of a really good film is that it left me wanting more.
Yeah. But
I could have watched another hour.
But the ending is so perfect, isn't it? It's almost like, you motherfucker, how did you, like, because it's the image of Little looking back with the under the moonlight, and it's like,
so is that
okay.
the suggestion then that there is still a nugget of that person, that innocent boy that he was?
That's what I took from it. It's almost like he spent his life trying to
run away from
that, who he is, his inner child, and at the end he's accepting that, and the inner child is acknowledging him in response to that. So they're he's connecting with himself more. That's what I got from that. I thought it was perfect. In the sea, under the moonlight, fucking hell. Absolutely magnificent ending. This is a masterpiece.
I get why it won Best Picture. Yeah. I'm surprised. And even when films about Black stories get nominated for things like this, there's usually still a white protagonist.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of Mahershala Ali, what was that? Is it Green Book?
Green Book.
Yeah, still kind of centered a white dude, though, didn't it?
It centered a white dude that was a racist.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, he's not quite as racist. So he's cool. A good guy now.
What an arc.
Viggo Mortensen eats fried chicken or something. I think that movie was called.
But you know what I'm saying,
that was directed by a Farrelly.
Was it really?
He made Dumb and Dumb. I
Holy
think so,
shit.
Yeah. What a bizarre film.
What timeline is this? But yeah, so you get what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, I do. Blacks,
even when they're thrown a bone,
yeah,
so to speak, it's never this kind of a film. So I'm surprised and elated that it won, to be honest. I think it deserved it.
I totally agree. I certainly fucking La La Land didn't deserve it either.
We don't know that. We've never seen it.
I can tell you now that they dance to jazz, Sarah.
But you like both Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, so maybe you'd love it. Just watch it on mute.
I hate jazz. And I hate it when people dance and they step around and they sort of look really happy and earnest.
You hate fun and joy.
I just hate fucking musicals, Sarah. I don't hate fun and joy, do I? I think it's a magnificent movie. I think it's a really interesting Black story that I'm really glad exists. An area that I have not seen or even, to be honest, thought about in my life. And I'm really glad that this happened. But also, as I say, I find it so relatable. I can empathise with the characters and what they're specifically going through. But also I can relate to it on so many personal levels as well. I think it's...
You also get horny at the beach.
Also get horny at the beach. Yeah. Yeah. It's because when I was a kid, I did that thing where you make yourself look like a mermaid.
Oh, it was the sand boobs that did it,
yeah. Like, and now I'm thinking about Steve Carell and 40-year-old virgin saying that the boobs feel like a bag of sand.
That was a connection that your brain made.
Anyway, end of the show. Yeah, good. This one, isn't it?
Good movie. Very good film. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to have to sort of sum up a film like Moonlight, because I'm sure it's been talked about, ad nauseum by much better podcasters than us.
Oh, undoubtedly. I listened to half of them, to be honest.
Did you?
Well, I listened to interviews with Barry Jenkins. I didn't listen to any that covered the movie themselves. But there's so much insight on this movie by Jenkins and the cast and the crew. There's a bunch of it out there specifically on YouTube as well.
Well, I think for a film with a budget of only 1.5 million, the creative decisions that were made, the casting choices, all of it just absolutely worked.
Yeah, it's fresh, it's unique, it's something I've not seen before, told in a way that I haven't seen before, that's relatable on so many levels.
And the casting was so good. It took me, I must have looked at the DVD cover 15 times before I realised it was 3 different faces.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah. The people that made that poster they also deserve the Oscar.
They do.
It was nominated for 8. I think it won 3.
Oh, good.
I think. Definitely Best Picture. I believe maybe... I've got no idea. Other awards.
Some other good stuff.
Best Animation. Yeah, magnificent. I will return to this movie, I think, semi-regularly. Okay. I think it's something that I could probably put on a fair amount.
Okay. I don't think I would necessarily... this is going to sound at odds with everything that I've just been saying. I don't think I would necessarily return to this film very often. But I will certainly watch it again. And I think it was excellent.
Cool. I'm really glad that you liked it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you bought it as well. So now we have it in the house.
Yes.
Because I probably would have got it on Blu-ray. Had you not bought it on DVD, I probably would have got it.
Oh, I'm sorry about my inferior technology.
That's all right. Maybe I'll still get the Blu-ray. Anyway. I just prefer the shape.
I know.
And the fact that they're blue. They're not all blue. Some of them are red. That's annoying. So are we wrapped up on Moonlight then?
I believe so.
Great. And I made it through the entire show without singing Dancing in the Moonlight.
No, you didn't. You just did it.
Oh, fuck. So we're at the halfway point now.
Mm-hmm. Already?
Already, yeah. We've done 4. We've got 4 more to go.
We do.
So next week, what are we doing, Sarah?
I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm going to apologise in advance. I'm going to punish everyone because my choice for number 5 in Coming of Age season is a contender out of left field, you might say. It's Come and See.
I have not seen this movie.
Oh,
so that'll be interesting. Ready. Yeah, okay, great.
It is harrowing.
I can't wait.